Why did Anil Ambani lose his $42 billion wealth? We all enjoy a good rags to riches tale, but how often have you heard of someone who went from multi-billion dollar wealth to penniless rags? Anil Ambani, an Indian businessman, experienced just that. From the priciest sibling feud in history to controversies including jail bailouts and a staggering $7 billion debt. Here is the story of how one man lost $42 billion. Ambani rising, energetic music. So who is Anil Ambani exactly, and how did he get so bad? So, in order to comprehend, let's travel back in time to India in the middle of the 20th century. On June 4, 1959, Anil was born in Bombay, Mumbai's previous name. Founder of one of the world's most powerful enterprises, Dhirubhai Ambani's youngest son. Dhirubhai moved to Aden, Yemen, at the age of 17 to begin working as a clerk at the major trading company Bess and Company. He gained knowledge of accounting and trading techniques as well as a zest for business here. In 1958, Dhirubhai decided to establish his own business trading spices when he returned to India. This firm eventually grew into his venture, Reliance Commercial Corporation. On April 19, 1957, Dhirubhai and his wife Kokilaben received their second son, Anil, after the birth of their first, Mukesh. The Ambanis were a young family renting a modest two-bedroom apartment in Buleshwar, Mumbai's Jai Hind estate. However, Dhirubhai's business was prospering. He quickly entered the textiles sector and continued to use the business model of providing top-notch goods at far lower prices than his rivals. This hazardous strategy, which depended on profitable high-volume sales, was a resounding success and caused business to expand swiftly. The Ambani family was soon able to move into a 6-story flat in Mumbai's Usha Kiran building thanks to Dhirubhai. Dhirubhai, who had humble beginnings, was keen that his sons should understand the virtue of perseverance, and he frequently planned incentive-focused family vacations. Later, Anil recalled how he and his older brother would travel difficult 6-mile distances in the pouring rain and would be rewarded with a box of mangoes to demonstrate that perseverance and hard effort are worthwhile. We'll soon find out how well Dhirubhai's boys responded to his attempts to instill business savvy, though. By the 1980s, Reliance had started to diversify into new markets, particularly the lucrative petrochemicals sector. Reliance has grown from having a single, small office in Mumbai to having a value of $122 million by 1983. As the money kept rolling in, Dhirubhai bought a massive 14-story high-rise building in Mumbai's important business sector of Cuff Parade, which became the official Ambani family residence. The brothers Anil and Mukesh were always going to work for the family firm, and by the time they were in their mid-20s, they both had significant positions inside Reliance Industries. Anil joined Reliance in 1983 as an executive working with corporate investors and the media, while Mukesh joined in 1981 as a hands-on facilities manager. Both men were just 24 years old at the time of their respective inductions. Despite the fact that each man's role was ideal, Mukesh was the more subdued, intensely driven businessman who preferred to spend his evenings at home with his wife Nita and their 2 kids. Anil, on the other hand, was a touch more flamboyant, enjoying interacting with Mumbai's socialites and Bollywood stars and gaining a reputation as a playboy. Anil loved the spotlight, whilst Mukesh shied away from it, but Anil's love of stardom proved to be quite a problem in more ways than one. Anil enjoyed socializing with members of the Bollywood Hall of Fame to forge stronger commercial ties, but he also had his personal romance with actress Tina Munam. Even though they say that love is blind, Anil's family was definitely not when it came to Tina's line of work. Anil and Tina were quickly pushed to give up because working in the film industry at the time was rather taboo for a conservative family like the Ambanis. Anil's parents, however, grudgingly gave their approval after much persuasion, and in February 1991, Anil and Tina were wed. Anil may have believed that this was the last significant argument he would have with his family members, but he was unaware of the storm that was about to strike. Even though Reliance had become a $15 billion corporation, the Ambani family was going to experience sorrow. Dhirubhai Ambani, 69, passed away abruptly from a heart attack on July 6 of that year. Dhirubhai had a net worth of $2.9 billion and was the 138th richest man in the world at the time of his untimely demise, according to Forbes. The Ambanis were required to abide with the Hindu Succession Act at the time since the Indian Parliament had rigorous laws on inheritance in place. According to the Hindu Succession Act, a man's personal property must be distributed between his widow and children if he passes away without leaving a will. The Ambanis' ability to manage Reliance's operations was their largest challenge. Mukesh assumed leadership of the family firm as chairman as the eldest, while Anil was named vice chairman. While this might seem like a natural solution to the succession issue, the two brothers were quite different, and as soon as the power shift took place, fractures started to appear. Anil considered the two brothers as equals, whereas Mukesh saw himself as the only boss of things because he was the eldest. As a result, each brother began making crucial choices for the business without first consulting the other. Sibling rivalries are not uncommon, especially when it comes to competing to be the greatest, but Reliance's importance to India's economy made it necessary to take action. Things deteriorated to the point where even India's finance minister sought unsuccessfully to mediate between these quarreling siblings. The most costly sibling rivalry in history was going to require more than just a government official to put an end to, and no one was better qualified to do it than Mommy Dearest, Kokilaben Ambani. However, despite Kokilaben's attempts to make her son see reason, the leadership dispute persisted, and neither brother was willing to budge on the crucial issue of who would ultimately govern the Reliance empire. Kokilaben eventually succeeded in persuading the quarreling youngsters to agree on a solution. The goal was to divide Reliance in two. Mukesh and Anil each own one half of the business. The brothers could agree on preserving Reliance as a multi-industry company even though their opinions on who should be in charge of things differed greatly. Mukesh attacked the previously successful, well-known firms Reliance Industries and Reliance Petrochemicals, whose primary activity was the sale of gas. Reliance Communications and Reliance Power were two examples of the more recent, flashier businesses that Anil wished to compete with. The division of the property contained a 10-year truce prohibiting either brother from working in the other's sectors or taking business from them. Right of first refusal was another agreement that was included in it. In the event that business shares were being sold, this gave each party the opportunity to purchase the other before any other parties who might be interested. The ceasefire, however, would ultimately contribute to some of the toughest issues the brothers would ever confront, despite the fact that it initially appeared like a fantastic solution. Reliance's separation was finally agreed upon and authorized by India's Supreme Court in December 2005 after 3 years of negotiations. The brothers were able to run their various halves of the company under a soft branding as they went their separate ways. Anil's side became the Reliance Anil Dhirubhai Ambani Group, also known as Reliance ADA Group, and Mukesh named his company Reliance Industries Limited. By 2006, each had become accustomed to their new positions as executives of two of India's largest firms. Even though they shared a large family house in the Ambani neighborhood, the two could not have been further apart. And both of them were devoted to being the most prosperous Ambani. The golden years, transition. Anil flourished in his early years performing alone. His first significant foray was into the telecom sector, where he effectively disrupted the market with Reliance Communications, a low-cost mobile network provider. To stay up with the developments in the telecom sector, Anil invested roughly $2 billion in obtaining 3G wireless signal technologies. In the late 2000s, 3G technology was cutting edge, and soon Reliance Communications was the leading mobile service provider in India. Anil, though, continued on to the next task without pausing to celebrate one victory. Anil bought the successful AdLabs Films and their chain of cinemas in 2005, rebranding it Reliance Media Works, in an effort to further solidify his position. Anil had acquired control of the biggest multiplex operator in India by 2008, which had more than 700 screens. Anil signed a $1 and developed connections in Hollywood. 2008 saw the signing of a $2 billion contract with American director Steven Spielberg to help finance his production business DreamWorks. Because of his association with DreamWorks, Anil benefited from numerous critically and commercially successful films you might be familiar with, such as War Horse, Lincoln, and Bridge of Spies. Reliance MediaWorks contributed to the funding of 11 nominated films in 2012, including The Help, for which Octavia Spencer won an Oscar. Anil even hosted private screenings of his Hollywood blockbusters at his house, with a guest list that included every important person in Mumbai society. Except for Mukesh, of course. Anil's prime years ended in 2008. When he offered shares of Reliance Power for sale in an IPO, he created history for the Indian stock market. By the time the firm was done, there was a demand for 10.6 times the number of shares that were offered, and every single one of them was purchased for $3 billion in under 60 seconds. Anil was finally ranked as the sixth richest man in the world on Forbes' 2008 list of billionaires, with an astounding $42 billion to his name. However, despite all of this accomplishment, it wasn't enough. Anil still felt as though he was following in the footsteps of his older brother, who was just one position and $1 billion richer ahead of him in position 5. Anil had no idea, though, that his envious ambition would bring him crashing down. Phone issues. Anil's issues really began when he realized his cell company Reliance Communications needed to generate more revenue in order to remain successful in the industry. Anil took out multiple sizable loans to support Reliance Communications in order to finance his ambitions for the mega extension in an effort to stay up with the pace of technological advancement. It's estimated that Anil's $2 billion expenditure in gaining 3G capabilities was responsible for about 50% of Reliance Communications' debt. However, there remained hope because Reliance Communications and MTN, a South African mobile operator, were in talks to merge the two businesses into one massive mobile merger at the moment. With two rapidly expanding mobile markets in South Africa and India, this was supposed to give rise to a formidable worldwide telecoms company valued at over $70 billion. Tragically, the plan failed, and it was all because of a relative of Anil. Recall the contract the brothers signed in 2005 granting them the right of first refusal? In the event of a sale or merger, that agreement provided Mukesh priority claims on shares of Reliance Communications. Due to a legality problem caused by this, MTN was unable to complete the transaction, and it failed in July 2008. As if things weren't bad enough, Anil's managing director and two vice presidents were detained in April 2011 on accusations of scheming to buy underpriced mobile network licenses for companies Reliance Communications invested in order to artificially boost share prices. Now, it seemed like the only way out of the debt and scandal was to borrow more money to pay back the money that Anil had already borrowed. 3 Chinese banks, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, China Development Bank, and Exim Bank of China, granted Anil yet another loan in 2012. Anil was able to collect a staggering $1.2 billion from the 3 banks to assist pay down the $7.19 billion in debt that had accumulated around Reliance Communications by 2011. However, despite how bad things were getting, it was not yet the worst. Betraying your brother. When Anil borrowed $922 million from Exim Bank in 2010 to construct a massive 780 megawatts power plant, the seeds of another bank-busting scheme were being sown. Given that Mukesh had agreed to sell Anil's businesses the gas required to build and fuel the endeavor at half the rate of government pricing as part of a family arrangement, this appeared like a plausible strategy to eventually generate a profit. The government, however, refused to ratify the brothers' previously reached agreement as construction got underway since the court ruled that gas rates must remain regulated to be fair to the larger economy. Sadly for Anil and extremely happily for Mukesh, this decision would treble Mukesh's gas income from the construction of the power plant. Anil publicly asserted at multiple news appearances in the late 1990s that Mukesh was using every available strategy to avoid his contractual commitments because he believed this was simply another ruse in their ongoing sibling feud. Anil's reputation wasn't helped by the highly visible power battle, and when Mukesh won the case in court, the value of several of Anil's businesses fell on the stock market. The brothers decided to renounce the non-competition agreement that their mother had negotiated for them back in 2005 following the arduous case. The brothers were now free to compete on any other remaining industrial tufts each occupied, even if Mukesh was required by the new agreement to delay entering the gas-based electricity production market until April 2022. Mukesh has ambitions for one of Anil's industries as well. Large plans, transition, connection lost. Things had been improving for Mukesh in a number of different ways while his younger brother was in trouble. Mukesh moved into his own little slice of paradise in Mumbai in 2012, and boy, is it a paradise. One of the biggest and most extravagant private homes in the world is this not-so-modest residence. Building took 4 years, costing an astounding $1.2 billion, and reached a height of 568 feet with 27 stories. You can't blame Anil for thinking that Mukesh was rubbing his face in all this excessive wealth when he built such a lavish residence. This opulent skyscraper estate, known as Antilia, has 9 ornately decorated elevators and a 6-story garage with 168 parking spaces. Even though Antilia has a 50-seat private movie theater, it seems that viewing drama on a big screen wasn't enough. Mukesh was prepared to stage an actual act of betrayal between brothers. 6 years after the new arrangement that permitted the brothers to compete, Mukesh made a splash in the communications sector by launching his own mobile network, Jio, in September 2016. After delivering low-cost 4G mobile coverage, Jio quickly racked up more than 150 million consumers, leaving other significant market participants scurrying to catch up. Given their enormous debts, Anil's Reliance Communications couldn't afford to keep up with Jio as he transformed the Indian telecom sector. Anil's telecom company astonishingly lost almost 98% of its value during a 3-year period despite once being the largest mobile provider in India. The reasons behind Mukesh's intrusion into his younger brother's business are unclear, but Jio's success was turning yet another one of the gaps in Anil's finances from hero to zero. Anil got into even greater problems as a result of Mukesh's success in the telecoms business. When he was unable to make payments on the $80 million he owed Ericsson, a Swedish network operator, he was served with a lawsuit in 2016. The Indian Supreme Court ordered him to make the required installments with interest or face jail time. Only a few days remained before the deadline when assistance from an unexpected source arrived. Mukesh recognized that he had to act and swooped in with the money required to prevent Anil from going bankrupt in order to avoid any association between the Ambani name and financial catastrophe. Even while this may appear to be a gesture of brotherly affection, Anil would have felt the most humiliated if his brother had had to bail him out in this manner considering their ongoing financial dispute. After the Ericsson debacle, Anil realized that his days in the telecom industry were spent, and Reliance Communications finally declared bankruptcy in February 2019. As if things weren't bad enough already, Anil was being pursued by other lenders. In the latter half of the 2010s, Anil was being followed by dozens of creditors, so everyone who wanted a piece of his shrinking wealth had to get in line. The 3 Chinese banks that Anil still owed money to filed a lawsuit against him in 2019 claiming he had given a personal promise that they would be paid back. These were the most important. Anil only managed to repay a small portion of the $1.2 billion he borrowed after 7 years, and the banks were pursuing him hard for the remaining $717 million.
Anil Ambani ultimately arrived at a point that looked unattainable just 10 years before, despite the seemingly endless sea of debt growing above his head. Anil made the exceptional assertion that his once dazzling $42 billion net worth had now fallen to $0, zip. Zilch, nada on February 7, 2020, shocking onlookers. Anil had effectively gone from hero to zero and lost it all, or so it may have appeared, on top of his continuous conflict with his brother and his discredited track record in company management. Anil managed to keep enjoying the outward signs of enormous riches, such as his opulent mansion, a private plane, a $3 million fleet of automobiles, and a yacht worth tens of millions of dollars, despite claiming to have nothing and declaring bankruptcy. Anil denied that he was the owner of the expensive yacht and asserted that it belonged to a firm and therefore wasn't a part of his personal riches. Of course, that didn't cover the rest of his countless extremely expensive possessions. Anil actually had a lot of non-liquid assets despite the fact that his wallet and bank account may have seemed empty. When it comes to liquid assets, in terms of ownership, liquid assets are those that can be rapidly and easily converted into cash, like money in a savings account, but non-liquid assets, like Anil's lavish fleet of automobiles, need selling at the risk of significant delay and value loss. The court will frequently order the defendant to use non-liquid assets to make payments in circumstances where they are projected to make large sums of money in settlements. Despite the fact that Anil said he had sold all of his jewelry to pay for legal bills, he was able to avoid selling his $3 million in luxury cars or his opulent mansion by having his attorneys argue that he actually didn't own those assets and had instead bought them in other people's names. Additionally, in 2021, allegations that Anil had stashed millions of dollars in foreign accounts came to light, hence, the truth of his purportedly empty wallet certainly has deeper layers. The judge also disputed the idea that Anil had the ability to request additional financial aid from his big brother throughout the action against the Chinese banks. Anil retorted that he had been informed that his father's rescue was a one-time gesture and would not be done again. Future fortunes, segue. The Ambani brothers' paths have taken quite a bit of time to diverge, as we have seen. With a staggering $217 billion in market capitalization, Mukesh Reliance Industries Limited was ranked as the 155th most successful worldwide company by the Fortune 500 list in 2021. Anil's older brother is still making headlines in the financial world, mingling with people like Mark Zuckerberg and agreeing to buy about 10% of Mukesh's mobile phone startup, Jio, in 2020. Mukesh will be the richest person in India as of early 2022. His net worth is an astounding $92.7 billion. In the Secret Santa game at the Ambani family office, I already know who I want to pick my name. Anil, on the other hand, has adopted a more secluded lifestyle and is working non-stop behind the scenes to try and save his enterprises and increase his net worth, whatever small it may actually be. Anil is said to run 10 miles 6 days a week at 5 in the morning. Eats sugar-free and puts in a 12-hour workday from 9:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. in the workplace. Even if he may be dishonest about how much money he actually has, you've got to give the guy credit for making an effort to make up for all he's lost. Anil's story, at least in his own estimation, is one of riches to rags, whereas his father's is one of rags to riches. It's almost amusing to believe that Anil was once lauded as a business genius after a complex web of lawsuits and scandals. And although Anil undoubtedly enjoyed a number of significant career achievements, it has been suggested that in the long run, Mukesh's patient, painstakingly planned, sustainable growth method prevailed over Anil's more rapid money-making endeavors. The straw that broke the camel's back may have been Anil's willingness to stop at nothing to distinguish himself from his brother in order to take the Ambani throne for himself. Who knows what heights the already wildly successful Reliance Corporation may have reached if Mukesh and Anil had put their egos aside and learned to work together. However, given their respective strengths in business development and interpersonal abilities, there is no denying anything. Keep your similarly filthy stinking rich family on your side if you ever become filthy stinking rich. What do you think about Anil's ups and downs? Is it possible to ever feel bad for a billionaire? As always, thanks for viewing. Please let me know in the comments section below.